Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, to all of our non-binary friends and everyone on the spectrum and in between, welcome to the 20th episode of the Shudda Show, Freaky Friday. I'm joined here by the father of this podcast and my temporary co-host,
Ken Stagnick. And Freddy Potatoes.
Of course, Freddy Potatoes. Ken, how you doing, bud?
I'm not too bad, buddy. What's your name?
My name's David Marlowe.
Yeah, you should introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, it's almost like you'd think I haven't done this like 20 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, we're all learning. We're all figuring
and
this out.
there's still some rust to shake loose on this bad boy.
No, I mean, podcasting is a delicate art that is hard to learn and takes a long time. So it's totally fine. We're still figuring it out, and we're just glad that you're here with us.
Yeah, good to be here. Ken, it's been 20 episodes now. How time flies.
It has been a journey. It has been a path. We've seen two paths diverge in the woods. We have taken both of them, backtracked, used the porta potties. We have brought snacks with us. We have figured out which snacks we like, and now we are just enjoying the trail.
Pretty good way to put it. So you feel pretty good about where things are at the moment?
I'm pretty happy about the discussions that we've had so far. I think today will be interesting because Prom Night is a movie that offers both a lot and a little. Prom Night actually I think brings up a really good way of framing how to discuss horror movies in a constructive manner because they can do a lot that's not original really well, and I think still be very, very solid. Mm-hmm. And they can also do what you've seen before in a very seen before kind of a way. And that's...
Well, it was sort of like it's like what you were talking about, like if you sat somebody down to watch Citizen Kane with zero context and not knowing really anything about the history of the film and what the film's paved the way for, they're pretty much saying, like, okay, yeah, that was a film. I've seen all of that before. To which case you're like, yeah, like, you've seen all of that before. Like, Prom Night is one of those films, and what was it? You had to choose between this and what was the other one?
Let's see here. We had a couple of movies last week.
Yeah, because I had picked a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, we had Prom Night.
I can't make decisions.
We had Dogtooth. We had The Woman, and we had The Collector, or Tourist Trap. Were all movies that we considered.
Tourist Trap?
Tourist.
Tourist Trap.
No, not Tourist.
Sounds like two very different movies.
Yes, no. A Tourist Trap is that is a sexual position, and we're not going to talk about that. But Tourist Trap is a horror movie that we're also not going to talk about.
And so, and I had seen this film, but I have not. Keep in mind, I have literally not seen this film since the second grade. I remember seeing.
It's pretty young for a slasher movie like this.
Yeah, I saw this on Halloween as a double feature. This is playing along with Halloween, and my dad
in the theater or like on TV.
On TV. So, but I was over at my dad's. My dad being not freshly divorced, but he's been divorced from my mother for quite a while, and so he does what most divorced dads do when they have sons. They try to play favorites, and he. In second grade, not only did I see Halloween and Prom Night for the first time, he also took me to the theaters to see The Faculty and to also see Starship Troopers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
So he was trying to be like fun dad.
Fun dad.
Yeah.
He was in fun dad.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I mean, to be fair, both Halloween and Prom Night don't have a lot of gore in it. They're not gratuitous.
They're not wet films at all, especially in comparison to many of the slasher films that came after them. Because slasher films often have a reputation for being very, very wet, for being very sticky. Yeah. And actually, the biggins of the industry, your Halloweens and your Texas Chainsaws, actually are pretty dry by comparison.
Yeah.
Where you have Dead Alive, or you have your Sam Raimi movies, You have your Maniac Cops. You have anything pretty much that Tom Savini was involved with. And things get pretty squishy pretty quick.
Yeah. And I don't think my dad also realized how much nudity was in this, which strangely enough, the nudity that's not in this is during the scene of the one girl that actually has sex in this movie. Because apparently, like, and I'm talking about, I think Jude was the character's name, with Slick, which, I'll dive into this a little bit more, but those were actually the most charming characters I found in this film, because I sort of thought that their relationship by the end of the film was kind of sweet. This dude starts off real creepy, pulling his van up, blocking the way of this girl that he's trying to hit on, and it really just looks like a chubby creeper trying to get a girl into his van. Come to realize he goes to school, and she says yes to them going to prom together, and, he doesn't necessarily, he just comes off as, over, confident, and that's just something that she digs in him. It's like, oh, he's really sure of himself, despite that he's this sort of adorable chubby guy. And so you're just like, oh, there's sort of a meeting of the minds going on here, and they screw in the back of the van. But it's just sort of, it's very sweet. And, he's going off to relieve himself, and he's just there, well, what did you think? Oh, it was great. And she goes, your first time too? He's like, yeah. And it's really adorable.
It kind of reminds me of in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, when you find out that the kind of bro-y dude had a wedding ring to propose to his girlfriend.
You're like, oh.
And exactly. And you're like, oh, I kind of, I get it. He was kind of compensating. Oh, that's actually kind of pretty cute.
They legit had, a picture-perfect moment of them losing their virginity.
Yeah.
And then it's just we might not date after this. Chances are we won't, but, regardless, I'm never going to forget this night. This was really nice.
He
doesn't slut-shame her.
Yeah, it's a weirdly sexually positive movie from a time when most of the movies were absolutely toxic in one way, shape, or form.
This movie does this weird balance between being weird and sexist, but at the same time also being sexually revolutionary. And it's the idea of there's two sides. There's the woman who loses her virginity, but then there's the other character, Wendy, who she's not really sure if she wants to lose her virginity. She likes her boyfriend. She wants her to stay. And he's obviously an asshole because she's like, I just don't want him to go have sex with other people. And that's why I'm going to give it up to him. But when the moment comes for that to happen, she just kind of says, you know what? No, I don't want to do this. And he pressures her, sure, but it doesn't go the way certain films might have had it go, where he forces himself on her. No, he's just a dick and walks out, and he's a real asshole and leaves her in this vulnerable moment. But this is a woman who is able to be like, you know what? No, I'm not okay with this. And I think that's a genuinely healthy thing to show on screen. The unfortunate thing is that she dies literally right after.
Yeah.
But it's it's a murder film. It's you take the good with the bad. But the thing is, it wasn't originally.
It's a slasher film. It is what it is.
Yeah, and it's a slasher film that the director Paul Lynch didn't originally he didn't write this for it to necessarily be a slasher flick. He was kind of looking more for a whodunit murder thriller.
Well, this is still 1980, so Halloween is 2 years old at this point. Psycho is 12. The only other there was you have Black Christmas, which I want to say is 75, and oh man, at this point, this is like trying to make a movie about this is like trying to make a post-apocalypse movie in around the same time. There's only one or two movies that have kind of done this before. So you're both figuring out what to do, but at the same there's now we look back on it and it's very clear that this is a genre emerging. But at the time, this is entirely new, and everyone is trying to figure out what it is that the kids want when they go to see this new style of horror movie.
And I mean, and this film, and I think a lot of modern moviegoers watching this film, kind of like when I was rewatching this, and you and I are very much on the same page with this, to where it's, I think I don't necessarily want to use the word forgettable, but kind of forgettable. Like it takes nearly like an hour before you get to your first actual on-screen kill. The first kill is actually done off-screen, outside of the story at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which I guess before we go forward with this, could you give me maybe just a small paragraph-long description of what this movie's about?
Sure. Pretty much, this movie is a bunch of kids in their youth bully a kid to the point that she falls out of a window and it seems dies.
Yeah.
And then several years later, when they're all in high school, someone starts murdering everyone involved in that accident, and
very I Know What You Did Last Summer-ish.
Yes, and then it's revealed who's doing the killing. It's very simple. It is not. It is.
They try to misdirect you, but you're just like.
It is.
Those kids were both wearing the same type of shirt.
No, not to give not to praise the movie too much, but it has a lot to do with the Mona Lisa, which is a painting that is important for what it did differently at the time it was commissioned. It is not necessarily the most flashy or important or fancy or well-drawn or well-realized painting. It is important because of the rules that it broke at the time, and you kind of need to understand what was happening in the genre at the time to appreciate what differently this was doing. And this was this movie has a lot to do with something like Lethal Weapon, which is a movie that has been stolen from so much that now when you watch it, you feel like you've seen every single scene. But that's because it's been stolen and borrowed from so much that every scene is absolutely just... You've seen every permutation of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. Like, Prom Night, I think, if you are a horror aficionado, is an important movie to see because it does a lot of things relatively well. There's nothing really for me that stands out. Like, there's nothing about Prom Night.
The killer is hilariously bad at his job.
Yes, yes. But, like, there's nothing in particular, like, there are, like, in the Saw movies, no matter how much you dislike them, and I dislike them quite a bit, you can say that, like, the murders are well done and interesting.
Yeah. Like Final Destination. You see those movies because of all of the crazy ways that a person can die from a basic accident.
The gymnastics scene from, I think it's Final Destination 5, is one of the most incredible death scenes.
Oh.
And yes, no, exactly. And like, this movie actually, Prom Night has a lot to do with the Final Destination movies. In the fact that, like, neither of these movies do their plot or their characters a lot of service. But they do what they do relatively well. This movie is a lot like that burger shop that delivers after 11 p.m. You're not looking for the best burger in the world. You're looking for something that is a burger and is deliverable at 11 p.m. And it'll be a little warm. It'll be a little squishy. It's not going to be necessarily cooked perfectly. It's probably going to be a little overdone. But
gets the job done.
It is going to get the job done. And that's what Prom Night does. It gets the job done. Yeah. I don't think it gets it done particularly well, but I think it does get it done.
Yeah. Now, have you seen... There's a good documentary out there. I can't remember the full title, but in parentheses, it's The Rise and Fall of the Slasher Film.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, really, really solid documentary. And Prom Night has a very special early part in this, where, I mean, because you could easily say that the slasher film started with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho.
It's going to be Psycho, or it's going to be Michael Powell's Peeping Tom, if you really want to get pedantic about it.
Yeah.
Because technically that movie came out before Psycho. However, it was released for I think a week and a half in Britain before it was banned. And then it wasn't re-released in theaters until, I want to say 2004, when Scorsese got behind it. So if Hitchcock saw it, he's one of 200 people who saw that movie. It's one of those it is a real Peeping Tom is a real footnote movie that is important, but let's be clear, it's a footnote.
Yeah, but outside of those classics, the slasher film as we really know it, or as we think about it, really started with Halloween, and Prom Night came in almost
it's 2 years afterwards.
Yeah, so 2 years afterwards. And keep in mind, Jamie Lee Curtis got her start with Halloween, and didn't really work for about a year or so.
And don't forget her mom's Janet Leigh, who's in Psycho.
Yeah, but then what was it? Carpenter threw her onto The Fog to sort of help her out in the meantime. But then she ended up getting Prom Night, and Prom Night was really that film that sort of how was it I put it
established her as a scream queen.
It cured the cementing of her in the Scream Queen royalty. And then, but even before Prom Queen, literally a couple of months earlier, was Friday the 13th. So I like to call Prom Night, Friday the 13th, and Halloween the throuple of the early slasher film, which literally just showed, of all studios, Paramount, that there is a lot of money to be made from these films. Because the budget of Prom Night was around 1.5 million Canadian. So to give you an idea, so this was directed by Paul Lynch. So he brought you films like Hard Part Begins, RoboCop TV series, Ray Bradbury theater anthology. He's done a little bit here and there, but Prom Night is really what he's known more from. Prom Night was filmed over 24 days in Toronto, Canada, as was Black Christmas, by the way, because around that time, especially, there was a really nice tax cut that you could get by doing productions in Canada, and the one thing that you were allowed is that you were at least allowed 2 of your main stars to be from wherever, but everyone else had to be local. So which turned out to be a little bit of an issue because unfortunately in Toronto at that time there weren't a whole lot of professional film crews, commercial and television maybe, but they actually had to look throughout Canada, and I think, a couple of other different Canadian cities. There were a few different schools that they brought film graduates from, and that was what their crew mostly consisted of. So there is definitely a little bit of a amateur-esque look to Prom Night that comes from that.
That's interesting because one of the things I would say is actually really strong in Prom Night is the cinematography. There's a lot of really nice use of long lenses, a lot of really nice choice angles, interesting compositions, use of split screens and split diopters. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and
that makes it look good, and it's not, and it's also not it's not a movie. It's very easy to go into into British Columbia and go into the forests and shoot a movie that looks really nice because you're in a beautiful national park. Of course it looks great. I remember when The Revenant won Best Picture, Best Cinematography over Sicario, and it's yes, British Columbia in the snow is incredibly gorgeous, and if you wait for the 2 20-minute portions of the day when the sun is behind the clouds, then yes, it's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. You know what's really hard to make gorgeous? The slums of Mexico, making making those towns look incredible that's real cinematography, and that's I don't know, but yeah, Roger Deakins not getting the respect that he deserves is a whole podcast unto himself.
Yeah, but this film, like, while it in $1.5 million budget, done in 24 days, in like we're talking Canadian dollars too, so do the math. I think it was somewhere. And what was like Jamie Lee Curtis made around $30,000 off of this film, which is about like $90,000 today.
Okay.
But Lynch says that the amount that they got in the budget was 75% thanks to Jamie Lee Curtis being on board.
Yeah.
Originally, they were going to cast an actress from the Brady Bunch, to which point then Lee's agency contacted them saying like, "Hey, Jamie Lee Curtis wants to do this film. She's interested." And the director's like, "Okay, cool, but this Brady Bunch girl is also like reading. We want to look at her too." And they're like, the producer was like, "I don't think you heard me. Jamie Lee Curtis, fresh off of Halloween, wants to do Prom Night."
It's Eve Plum was the who played Jan, the middle daughter. So the one who says Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
Oh, okay, cool.
She was the one who was interested in it.
Okay, I see. But yeah, so it's just like, but she's the reason why it made as much as it did, and it grossed around, like, after its run in the United States, grossed around $15 million.
It's definitely why we're still talking about it today. If this didn't have Jamie Lee Curtis in it, I really feel like this would be a footnote of a footnote kind of a movie. And
it earned a couple of awards in Canada too. It got the Genie Award for it didn't earn the awards, but it got nominated for both of them. So Best Foreign Actress for Jamie Lee Curtis, and Best Editing for Brian Ravick.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I tried looking up other things that he's done, and unfortunately I don't think he went on to do a whole lot more. He's done work here and there, but I think he's one of those types of people who takes whatever film work comes his way. So I don't think he does mainly just editing. But yeah, it was. So yeah, and everything was shot on location at Don Mills Collegiate Institute, which throughout all the sequels, they're all shot at the same place. So hold
on. Let's be clear. Brian Ravick was the editor on Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. All 13 episodes.
Oh shit, son.
Yes, no, absolutely. So let's stand a king while we can.
Yeah, but I don't know. I while the film on its head is kind of forgettable in the modern day, I do think the stories behind how it came to be and the actors on set and the things that happened, I think lend itself to a good reason to really look into this. Like, for one thing, I just like how it turned out to become the product that it was, because I think Paul originally pitched a film to Peter, the producer, who passed away. God, I can't remember what year Peter passed away. Peter, what's his last name?
Producer Peter Simpson.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work. He
died in 2007.
2007. Okay, yeah. So relatively not a while ago, but not too long ago.
Yeah.
But he originally pitched a film to him about a killer doctor, and it was called We'll See You Now. But the producer didn't really like the concept. It didn't like the idea of making a doctor a killer, and thought it might turn some people off to it. So he's just like, you know what? Like, I'm not digging that. Tell you what. Walk away and choose any holiday. And I want you to come back and I want you to pitch me a treatment on that holiday. And so as he's driving away from that, he literally drives past this motel, and on their little sign...
It's Happy Arbor Day.
No. They're advertising a special deal for kids who might want to rent out a room after prom.
What would kids want to do in a hotel room after prom, David?
Well, play... I don't know, like Heads Up, 7-Up? I don't know what high school kids were playing back then. I'm guessing they wanted to fuck.
Okay.
which you could not get away with that
today.
Probably not. But he thought it really, really funny, and it just kind of stuck with him. And he's just like, you know what? He said a holiday. But I wonder if I can get away with Prom, because it's a yearly event. It's almost like a holiday.
Yeah, it's better than Arbor Day, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just like at the same time, like it gets you to like you can get young kids, like you can have a nice young cast. It sort of hits all of it checks off all the marks.
There's no trees like in Arbor Day.
Yeah,
which is the big problem with Arbor Day. You have all those trees to deal with, and like trees are sexy, but they're not that sexy.
Yeah, so he I believe it was a UIC graduate who ended up giving him the idea behind the prank that the kids pull on the other kid, and which draws out the whole premise of the film. So yes. I just thought that was a fun little way that this film came into being. That it's like he was originally gonna be doing a film possibly about a deadly doctor's office, which I would have also seen. I think that sounds a little bit more interesting.
One of my favorite catchphrases from a horror movie is from a movie from someone which I worked. Corbin Burnson, The Dentist 2, which has the most amazing catchphrase, which is The Dentist 2, brace yourself, which is just an absolute chef's kiss.
I love me a good poster tagline. It's just...
Yeah, it's so good. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but I think that this film is fascinating in the sense that it does some things that you wouldn't necessarily expect a film in this time to do, but because it was one of the first slasher films to really pave the way for all the other not-so-good slasher films to do literally the same thing. The rules hadn't been set yet.
It is a Carl's Jr. hamburger. It is not the best fast food hamburger. It is not the best gourmet hamburger. It is, however, better than some of the hamburgers. However, it is not doing anything necessarily new, and it might be slightly overpriced. But if you are a hamburger completist, it is something that you should definitely check out.
Yeah.
You should definitely see. And you should definitely form an opinion on. And my opinion is mostly...
Yeah. I think... Which is not necessarily what we wanted to like have for like our 20th episode of Shutter Show, but I think... One of the things we're trying to do, I think you would agree as the creator of this podcast, is really not so much review films as it is just talk about film itself and include different aspects of it, being the weird stories that went on set and like what this film might have meant to a genre.
So when it comes to movies, I think there's a real misconception when it comes to how to talk about them. And one of the things that I think that we can take away from a different section of social media is food Twitter. And that's how you can talk about how you might enjoy something even though you don't think it's necessarily good. A deep fried Twinkie is not necessarily something that I want to eat all the time, but at a state fair at a certain time of the year, under certain circumstances, I can absolutely enjoy a deep fried Twinkie. In the same way that like there are times that I want to eat a salad, and there are times that I want to eat a giant stack of pancakes, and there are times that I want to shove a turkey leg in my mouth, and there are times that I want to eat a hamburger. And all of these things are different levels of quote unquote good for me, but they are also different levels of good to put in my mouth. And there's a lot of movies that are very good to put in your mouth but aren't necessarily good for you. And there are a lot of movies that are good for you but that are not necessarily enjoyable when you watch them. I don't believe that anyone enjoys watching Schindler's List, but I understand completely if you're happy that you've seen it and you were willing to take the trauma that goes with watching a movie like that, or Hotel Rwanda, or Irreversible, or frankly anything by Lars von Trier or Gaspar Van Noot. Like they are not making movies to please you. They are making movies to make you feel a certain way.
Not all cinema is entertainment.
Yes, just in the way that like not all food is designed to be delicious. Some food is designed to be nutritious. Yeah. Some food is designed to just be calories. Like no one makes hardtack and is excited about the flavor. However, if you need calories that'll last you 6 months to a year,
it shit'll hold you. I've worked I've worked at a historical reenactment museum, and we actually made hardtack, and we ate that on the regular. And I cannot say it is in any way delectable, but apparently it is semi-nutritious.
It will keep you alive.
Yes,
that's all that is agreeing
and
to
this
you.
and this kept the genre of the slasher film alive, and did so very well. It was very successful to the point where, like, Avco Embassy Studios, the studio behind this film.
Yeah, there's at least 2 more of these and a remake, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, there's several sequels. And I would say the sequels are much better than this film.
Oh shit.
Like they're really good actually. But the interesting thing was that they kind of got in a symbiotic bidding war on this film with Paramount Studios.
Oh.
A studio that, hands down had much more money than they did.
Yes.
But the way that things were laid out in the contracts with this film, they kind of traded off ownership and distribution of Prom Night as time went along. And the film was actually shot with very little, like, it was not super gratuitous because the director wanted to do it in that way. So that way when it came time to be able to release it on television, he actually could release it without sacrificing large chunks of the story.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It was Avco Studios that was just like, no, we need a head decapitation. We need some tits here and there.
Yeah.
We need
a couple of things here and there, but yeah.
The things that allows us to make the poster is pretty much what they needed. But they were able to switch off distribution between them and Paramount, and that's how the movie continues to make an insane amount of money. Like even now. What was it? And there's a lot of traditions that apparently now it's become sort of a small tradition for kids these days to watch this movie before going to prom. And even the guy who plays the brother in this film, who is a father of 3 now, every time they're about to go to every time they're in high school and they're about to go to prom, it is tradition that he literally takes out the mask of the killer and wears it and poses with an axe next to his daughter and her dates.
That's pretty cute.
So yeah, it's got its own. It's found its cult following, and while it's not necessarily the best of the batch, there's some really interesting stories behind it. They're like the music. Like for one thing, this is a huge, like not even a love story because disco was what was going on at the time.
Yes,
but this is very disco.
Oh, 100%.
Super disco.
Yeah, the soundtrack is pretty disco end to end.
Despite the fact that they were dying to get Jamie Lee Curtis onto this film and that she was interested and she actually wanted to do it, they still made her audition. They still had her, like, as they quote, jump through several hoops. They had her do several dance auditions to make sure that she could actually do the disco dancing. Like a whole bunch of different things that she had to do, which already her resume showed that, yeah, she can do those things. But he's like, nah, I just want to see it. Mm-hmm. And they were like, the producers were literally worried that they were going to lose Jamie Lee Curtis because she's like, why are you having me do this?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that even though this is very disco, you might notice that the music is a little repetitive. There is a very funny reason for that. And that is the music that they were playing on the day when they were having them dance to it was the music that he wanted on there. We're talking hit disco songs. Yeah. Staying Alive, I Will Survive, all of those films. But not once did they think, the rights to this might be kind of expensive. And I shit you not, just for one of those songs. When it finally came time to like get the rights to just put it in their film, the studios were like, okay, that'll be $800,000. To which point the director cursed out the producer on the phone and says, you can fuck right off. And so this poor composer, Paul Zaza, was asked to write 6 to be exact, original but similar disco songs in 5 fucking days.
Mm-hmm.
6,
right.
And he's like, but he says, like, here's the thing. I want these songs to not be a duplicate, but I want them to be so close that we'll get sued for it. But not sued to the point where we'll lose. And they were, in fact, sued. I think it was like a $10 million lawsuit, copyright lawsuit. And they had to settle for $50,000. So I think all in all, given how much the movie's made, it was worth it. But I just feel so bad.
That's quite the strategy.
I just feel so bad for that composer. Just like as things are sort of wrapping up, just to be like, hey, so we learned something today. And you have to have... you're not going to see your family for at least 5 days. Like, how does that sound? And it's just like Leslie Nielsen, for example, who is in this film. Not in it much. He plays like the father of the main characters.
Yeah, like the principal, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like one of his last serious roles before he hopped on Airplane, and kind of got more into comedy. But Leslie Nielsen does this thing apparently, or did this thing, where he would just be around, and it usually was somebody he didn't know well, and he does the perfect sound effect for a fart. And every time he would introduce himself to somebody or shake their hand, he would just let out the loudest fart possible. And no one ever laughed. And it was always just like, it always just made people uncomfortable. But sometimes he would fart for real, and people were left to wonder whether it was the real thing or not.
That's such an incredible boss move.
Like, on set at one point, he just kept ripping the loudest, like, real farts on set. And not even the director chimed in. I think it was just a random sound guy. He's like, hey, can we cut? And at which point Leslie Nielsen had to leave the room anytime he had to pass gas because they were so loud.
That's like, what is it? It's on the set of Princess Bride. Andre the Giant let rip a 13-second fart. And at the end, Bob Reiner said, good God, are you okay, Andre? And Andre said, I am now, boss.
But there's... oh, God, what was it? One of the actors, I think it was the one who plays his son. Like, he went and had drinks with him and Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
And before leaving the bar, like, he just continued farting throughout the whole time. And he walks away, and apparently Christopher Plummer says to this actor, is like, he really does have a problem, doesn't he?
Oh, Christopher Plummer.
I will miss that man so much.
But I don't know. Kevin Spacey.
Like, I don't know. And then it's just like, then you have those stories about like the actress playing Jude, like being asked, like she was the only one who had sex in this, like the only character who had sex in this film, but there was no nudity. Mm-hmm. And that's because nudity, like this was her first role. And there was no, like her contract didn't state that there was going to be nudity. And there was somebody on set who was really pressuring her to be naked for this film. Unfortunately, as a woman, that was just like gave her, and she says, like, I remember she gave me a really hard time about it. And I felt like there was a lot of pressure, and it was almost a little traumatic. But she's like, I stuck to what I wanted. And she's like, I think that almost like it allowed the character Jude to be a little bit more innocent and also at the same time being like, yeah, no, this is perfectly normal and fine. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is a teenager having a regular teenager first moment, like that I think everyone, or most everyone, experiences in their life. And it doesn't shame her for it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, and I really respect this actress's ability, this being her first film, to be like, no, I'm not comfortable doing that. Could you please stop giving me a hard time on this? And it's just like, I don't know, there are things like that in this film that I think make for a great example and make for a good role model for a lot of people into film, because horror especially gets that unfortunate thing, which sometimes it's warranted. It's that horror is a very sexist genre, which it certainly can be.
It's very easy to accidentally do some sexism or some racism or some ableism or some... Take your pick of any of the isms.
Yeah.
In horror. It's a genre where even if you are trying to show it off as a negative, it will likely come off as a positive. It is a lot like trying to make an anti-war film. The problem with making an anti-war film is at some point you're going to make war look kind of rad, and as a result, horror is.
Or you're going to be Jarhead, where marketing tries to make it look rad, and then you realize, oh, this is a movie about nothing happening.
Well, but But also, it's still a movie with some pretty cool images. Like, there are some people who definitely saw Jarhead and wanted to still sign up. And yeah, horror is kind of the same way. Like, even if you're trying to state a negative, you're going to end up creating a certain amount of positive. But Prom Night does a pretty good job, I would say, of presenting all of the tropes, but not doing it in the doing it in a way that is a whole lot less problematic than you would expect it to be.
Exactly. And so, kind of like seeing a movie like Citizen Kane, like, you might not... This is a movie that, regardless, I still highly recommend people check out. Because it's a piece of horror history. It's that one horror that... It's one of the thruples that allowed studios to be like, you know what? There's money to be made. So, you know what? Bring it on. Mm-hmm. Let's, like... And we have this and 2 other movies, really, to thank for paving the way for some horror movies like Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't think Nightmare on Elm Street would have existed were it not for movies like Friday the 13th and Prom Night and Halloween.
They definitely were the movies that gave low-budget producers the confidence to just kind of go out and make a movie about teenagers killing each other.
Exactly. So yeah, I recommend this film. I don't think it's going to be quite what you expect or quite the pace that you were expecting, but I do think that there's a lot to take from this.
It's a really solid base hit. It's nothing incredible, but at the same time, it does what it says what it's going to do, which is get on base.
But it's not the offensive meh.
Yeah.
There are some movies out there that piss me off by how meh they are. And those are films that are modern and just do the checkpoints and just go down the list of things you're supposed to do in this type of movie.
Yeah.
And offer nothing. Like, it's just the biggest waste of money, time, and resources for just the biggest, like, just to force people to waste a portion of their life and not get anything out of it.
Now, David, speaking of waste of resources, I have this time machine. And in this time machine, we are going to travel forward in time about 5 or 6 minutes.
State of the art, baby.
And the difference between then and now is then we will have seen the trailers for 2 movies that neither of us have seen. This is going to be a double blind. Our next episode, episode 21, is going to be a double blind episode where neither of us have seen the movies that we're going to be seeing before. It is either going to be The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears or The Ninth Configuration.
I have seen neither of those. One of those titles I'm not going to remember.
That's entirely the point. So, David, won't you step into the time machine with me?
Oh, well, thank you, sir.
No problem.
I'm holding the door like a gentleman.
Yes, no, absolutely. And we're going to travel forward in time about 5 minutes.
I'm taking this beer with me.
Well, fine. In which case, we have both seen these trailers.
Do you think the beer will age?
I think it will, but not in a way that you can tell. Are you ready, David?
I am so ready.
David, we're in the future now.
Yep, the beer's stale. Guys.
It's true. That's how time works. David,
still gonna drink it.
Of the 2 movies that we watched, which is the movie that you want to make or you want to watch for our next episode?
Well, one had a very beautiful quote that really almost had me grabbed, but then you showed me the trailer for The Color of Your Body's Tears, and that looks fucking gorgeous.
All right. Sweet.
So I am all about that one.
All right,
let's do that.
Let's check that out.
So yeah.
All right, that'll be episode 21 then.
Yes, episode 21. God damn, it's still blowing my mind that we're at the good old 2-0 now. It's also weird that much time has passed, because did we start this just as the pandemic, as the stay-at-home order was...
Slightly before, yeah.
Right before?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So
we were just kind of figuring out our legs as things got locked down.
Oh, fuck, man. And we took a week or 2 break at one point.
Yes.
Other than that, we've been pretty consistent with it.
And I'm fairly so.
I'd have to say I'm pretty happy with how this is going so far.
Absolutely. 20 episodes so far, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
David, do you have any plugs to Pluggable?
You can find me at _DW Marlowe on Instagram, where you can follow my many musings and or life happenings in my tiny one-bedroom apartment with my wife. Outside of that, feel free to follow the Instagram that I manage for Shutter Show at Shutter_show. Other than that, not a whole lot to pitch your way.
And you can find us on Twitter at Shutter Show. No underscore on that particular one. You can find me on the Instagram and the Twitters at Ken Stachnik, STACHNIK. You can find my dog at Freddy Potatoes. And that's both on Twitter and the Instagram.
Oh, please check it out. It's so adorable.
And other than that, I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, boys and girls, to all of our non-binary friends, to everyone on the spectrum and in between, have a good night and go fuck yourself.
We love you. Fuck off.
Good night.